me after the service, and you can enjoy the drive out. If it's rainy, you can enjoy the rainy drive. If the sun comes out, you can enjoy it even more. But there are 6 pictures on those sheets with questions or information that you need to find along the way. Wise choices. We all live in a place in life where we're faced with some choices. I got the perfect illustration of seeking wisdom for a choice on Friday at noon. Friday morning I got up and I drove to Bathurst to get a piece of furniture from my dad, because Dad and my stepmom, they put the house on the market hoping it would sell by the middle of the fall. In a very depressed market in Bathurst, and they're going to be out by the 1st of July. Suddenly, with not sure where they're going. Fortunately, the church up there has an empty parsonage, so they've got a temporary place to go. But when I arrived at noon on Friday, they were telling me about some phone calls, and they all of a sudden were faced with a choice. They could have one spot that wasn't quite what they wanted, guaranteed for September. Or if they wanted to wait till November or December, they could get what they were looking for. And so they were in the midst of trying to figure out a wise choice and seeking God's face. Their business, I won't tell anybody what they finally decided with it. But to understand those kind of being put in a situation where all of a sudden, and they needed by 3 o'clock Friday afternoon to have made a choice. Have you ever been put in a position where not only were you seeking wisdom to make a choice, but you were also feeling a little bit under the gun with pressure? Yeah, we can identify with that. Well, I want to begin by talking about Solomon. Solomon was a young man. And as a young man, he inherited the kingdom of Israel from his father, David. And his immediate thought was, how am I going to handle this? So on his bed at night, he prayed for wisdom. And I don't know why God used dreams to talk to Solomon, but he used dreams a lot. And he appeared in a dream to Solomon, and he said, look, I'll give you what you need. He says, well, I need wisdom to be able to care for these people properly. And God says, okay, good choice. I'll give you the wisdom. I'll also give you some of the things that you didn't ask for. Success, wealth, all those things that you didn't ask for. And Solomon's dad, David, had given him a task. He said, I want you to build a temple, a place to praise God. So Solomon built the temple, and then he prayed. And he said, God, will you honor the prayers of people? If they're having a difficult time, you answered my prayer, but will you honor the prayers of the people in this temple? And it's an answer when God appeared again to Solomon in a dream and answered that prayer, that we get a really important perspective. Now, the reason I'm starting with Solomon is that as a church, we're going to get a report today that puts us on the path of seeking some wisdom about the future physical home of us as a church fellowship. Whether it's this building or another building or all that kind of stuff that's been sort of swirling around. We face that choice over the next few months. We also face another choice. As a denomination, Zachary and Amelia, you can put 3K for 3K. The number 3, the letter K, the number 4, the number 3, and the letter K. I should be trying to do that backwards so it makes sense to all you guys when I'm doing it with my hands. As a denomination, we've taken on the challenge of trying to get 3,000 people, that's the first 3K, who will pray daily that sometime in the next 7 years, we will have a year with 3,000 people making a commitment to Christ and being baptized. So for us as a church, we need to break down some math on that. We're one of about 400 odd churches, Baptist churches in Atlantic Canada. Believe it or not, we're probably in the top 200 size-wise. So what's our fair share of 3,000 people? As you know, it's just a figure thing, but it helps us some kind of focus. If we were to have 3,000 people come to know Jesus Christ and be baptized across Atlantic Canada, and if it was sort of proportionate to all of our equal effort in all of our churches to see that happen, how many people would that mean in that particular year were baptized and became part of this church family?
3,000. Aim high.
3,000 aim high. Doing math quickly, looking at sizes of churches, that's about 15 people. So part of the question for us is, if we're going to step up to the challenge and pray for the 3K, praying for 3K, we need to do some thinking about how are we going to be the kind of a church that reaches 15 people a year for Jesus? And who are those 15 people? Does that make sense that that's a wisdom question? Who's God calling us to be as a church is the question. We set a budget for our church for 2018, and it was an aggressive budget. And here we are halfway through the year almost, and the money that's been coming in isn't what we budgeted. So as we go through the year, we've got these building questions ahead of us, we've got these mission questions ahead of us, we've got these how do we budget for 2019 questions that we'll be answering. I don't know about you, but I think we could use some wisdom. And so those are choices that I put out there to make this message real for us. We want God's wisdom. So Solomon had asked, and God answered Solomon. On your page, if you want to write down this, 2C 7:14. 2C 7:14. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. If you have a bulletin with you, it's right there on the front of your bulletin. God answers Solomon's prayer, and in dealing with it, he points out something very important. It says in verse 12, one night the Lord appeared to Solomon and said, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this temple as a place for my sacrifices. At times I will shut up heaven so that there's no rain falls, or command grasshoppers to devour your crops and send plagues among you. Then, and this is the key verse, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and restore their land. Solomon's focus was on a building. That God would honor the prayers in this building that he had built. God appeared to Solomon in a dream and he told him the issue is not the building. The issue is the people and their hearts. We'll talk about building later. But the really big issue looking ahead for us is who are we? Who are we as the church that inhabits any building? And where are our hearts towards God? Because God says, if my people, followers of Jesus, who are called by my name, what was that first name that they gave in the New Testament to people who were following Jesus Christ? Christ ones? Became known as Christians. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then God says He will act. Where He places the emphasis is on our hearts. Well, time went on. Jesus came. People became Christians. They were followers of Jesus. And we go into the book of Acts. You want to flip that next slide up there? See those folks? You may have encountered some of them somewhere. Acts chapter 19. Acts chapter 19 shows us some people meeting about a religious issue, not necessarily the right way. The issue was that economically, Paul, having people come to know Jesus, was not good for them because they were not making money out of selling idols. And so a riot started in the city of Ephesus. And they grabbed Paul, and they grabbed them, and they took him into a public place. And then it says something fascinating. It says, inside, the people were all shouting. Some were shouting one thing, and some were shouting another. Everyone was confused. In fact, most of them didn't even know why they were there. The two words that describe the people in these pictures are anger and confusion. One word that you can cross out from that is there was nothing helpful going on there. People were just worked up, had different opinions, and there was a lot of loudness and a lot of confusion. Those of you who've been in congregational churches like ours for a long time, you ever been in a business meeting that went that way? It's not God's plan. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And we don't want to be Acts 19 people. We don't want to be controlled by anger and confusion. And most of us not even knowing why we're there. Amen? Let's go back to Acts 15. In Acts 15, there was another gathering. The issue was, Christianity had started out as a branch of Judaism. And all of the people who initially came to follow Jesus were of Jewish tradition and background. And then God had spoken to Paul, or to Peter rather, through and through, once again, an afternoon dream on a rooftop. And he had told him that, get rid of this Jew-Gentile thing. And Jesus came for everybody. Jesus came for everybody. And so Peter went to the house of Cornelius. And God's Spirit moved on the people of Cornelius' house, and they became followers of Jesus. Then a little later on, Paul and Barnabas went on a missionary trip, and more people who weren't from a Jewish background began to follow Jesus. And so this became an issue. All of a sudden, those who came from a Jewish background and were following Jesus had to figure out what things from my Jewish background are important for following Jesus, and what things from my Jewish background aren't important for following Jesus. And it became a really big issue when some of the ones who thought that everything was important for these non-Jewish believers to do went and told them so. And it created an issue. That never happens in church, right? You can't really follow Jesus unless you do it the way I do. ever, you can't, I don't even want to get into examples of that because it's just not right. When we try to make people follow Jesus exactly like us, it's just not right. So, the issue happens in Acts 15. And the response is a little different from this picture. Can you pop up that next picture? They hold a council. And at the council, some interesting things happen. In Acts 15, we read in verse 7 that Peter addressed the crowd and told them what God was already doing. Then by verse 12 it says, everyone listened quietly as Barnabas and Paul told about the miraculous signs and wonders that God had done through them among the Gentiles. They took the time to look and see what was God doing. And they discussed it, and they came to a conclusion. And in verse 28, we see a very fascinating beginning to their conclusion. Their conclusion was this: for it seems good to the Holy Spirit and to us. Through their discussion, through their prayerful discussion, they had come to a place where they were absolutely convinced that it was God's Spirit convincing them to have a solution. Was there anger there? Yeah, there was a little anger when this meeting began. Was there a little bit of confusion? Yeah, they weren't quite sure where to go. But in conversation and in seeking to see what God was doing and what He would have them choose, it was an incredibly helpful meeting. As a church, we try to work by consensus. And if we believe consensus is just everybody has to have the same exact thoughts and opinion all the time, then we end up not with Acts 15, but we can end up very easily with Acts 19. Where it's just a gathering of opinion and different opinions standing their ground. But what consensus really is when we as a church look at a question and we say, what is God doing? What do we really want to consent to God calling us to do? We have a meeting, Jason and I have a meeting. Jason says, look, we got to get rid of the sermon, we got to do all the music. And I say, we got to get rid of some of that music, I need longer for the sermon. And are we ever going to reach consensus? Yes, when we stop and say, what does God want us to do? And what do we believe He's calling us to do? And we really haven't had that argument, have we? You're just there and it's easy and so sorry. You see how consensus works? Acts 15 model. They listened, they prayed. They sought the answer to what they believed God's Spirit wanted them to do. And when it came time to consent to something, they consented together to what they believed God was calling them to. That's our model. That's our plan. I want to take us to one last place, some really good sound advice. Whether it's what we do with our finances, or what we do with what is our target and our steps, how do we be part of this 3K or 3K thing, or how do we figure out all of this stuff about whether this building is the long-term home for our church fellowship and all that kind of stuff. How do we figure, and whatever other questions come our way in the next year or so, How do we figure that all out? Where do we begin? Would you turn to James chapter 1 with me if you have your Bibles? And probably just about all of you are a little faster than me. That's okay. James chapter 1. Dear brothers and sisters, when trouble comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Let me paraphrase that to a church meeting. Dear brothers and sisters, when a tough decision comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect, complete, and needing nothing. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, who will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask Him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person who has divided loyalties is as unsettled as a wave that is blown and tossed by the wind. Where do we begin to look ahead and to make wise decisions, not only as a church family about things, but where do you begin as an individual to make wise choices? If you are a follower of Jesus, if you have asked Jesus to come into your heart, where you begin is James 1. Asking God to show you. Does that make sense? Asking God to show you. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God. We're going to practice that for a moment. We're going to go to a time of prayer. And as we begin, I want to give you an opportunity to, I'm talking about church stuff, but we all have personal decisions that we need help with in wisdom. So whatever the question is for you this morning, the choice that you need to make, I invite you to think about that for a moment, and I'm going to invite you to sort of close people off by just bowing your heads, closing your eyes, and turning the palms of your hands up towards God. And just in quiet, listening and saying, God, give me wisdom for this choice. Let's pray. Father, I invite you to touch us individually as we think about what it is that you want to do with the choices that face us. And Father, we're going to take a moment and just sit in quiet before you, just listening to hear the voice of your Spirit speak wisdom into our hearts. Father, help us to regularly slow down like that before you. If we have committed our lives to a relationship with you through Jesus Christ, through all that He accomplished on the cross for us, through all that He accomplished with His resurrection, help us to slow down and bring our questions to you. And listen for you to speak into our lives. Father, speak by planting verses of Scripture in their minds. Speak by using the words that have been shared with us by fellow Christians. Father, speak with word pictures and thoughts that come from your Spirit. Lord, if you can't get our attention any other way, do something miraculous. But help us to be a people who listen for you and talk things through and make the choices that we believe are from you. Because we want to be all that we can be for your people. Father, we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to officially invite the worship team to come and close our service in song, but don't rush off. I tried to finish a few minutes early so that we've got time for Andrew and John and Randy and your